We're done. All right, perfect. So let me just hop over to the lesson. All right, can you guys see that all right? I see a head nod, so that's good. All right, cool. So today we are going to go over Route 53, zones and records. Let's go to the README. That's probably a better place to start. So just a little heads up before we start this lesson, there is a part of this that includes DNS registration. However, Julius and other members of Code Platoon are working on getting accounts so we can actually register some records and stuff. But I mean, we'll cover all this later on. However, we won't actually be able to fully register or DNS records and our domain names. So that's pretty much what we're doing. We're using DNS to pretty much make our IPs into domain names, which because computers only read like ones and zeros, right? And you have IPs addresses, and they can read that with a compiler. And so what DNS does, or Route 53, excuse me, it will take those ones and zeros and pretty much route it to the domain name that you type into the browser, and it'll take you to your application where you want it. So anyways, let's go over this. DNS. Does someone want to read probably this first paragraph or this first section right here? Do I have a volunteer for that?
Yeah, I can. The DNS domain name system web service from Amazon Route 53 is robust, reliable, and scalable, designed to give developers and business high availability and cost-effective routing. End users are routed to internet applications by translating names such as www.example.com into numeric IP addresses such as 192.0.2.1. Computers use these addresses to connect with each other while compiling to various policies. Route 53's core function is to route DNS requests. The name stems from port number 53, which is the default port number for DNS. Some of the advantages using Route 53 include Amazon Route 53 is fully IPv6 compliant, support DNS security extensions for added security against spoofing, supports various traffic routing policies, provides health checks and failover through built-in monitoring, event point, and RDS DB health. Integration with other AWS services such as Global Accelerator, improving route speeds to multiple regions.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, so I guess I kind of jumped the gun there a little bit with this paragraph right here. But yeah, so DNS, everything's going to have an IP address in networking, right? Like you're going to cover that later, especially with like CIDR notation and stuff like that. But however, to link these two, your resource IP address, and then I don't know, what you would see in the browser, what you would type into a browser like example.com, google.com, other domain names like that. We need a way to establish the link between those and where it goes. And so that is what we use DNS for. And so that in AWS land is called Route 53 is their service that will handle all their domain named system services. Um, Different cloud providers will call it different stuff. Oracle just calls it DNS. AWS calls it Route 53. All the same stuff though. Cool. Do we have someone that would like to read this part? Don't be shy now.
I got you. Amazon Route 53 effectively links user requests to infrastructure running in AWS, such as Amazon EC2 instances, Elastic Load Balancing, load balancers, or Amazon S3 buckets, and is used to route users to infrastructure outside of AWS. As such, it is a critical core service for any aspiring AWS practitioner to understand. Our goal is to become familiar with Route 53's core purposes, DNS registration and traffic routing, as well as introduce you to significant features such as its application recovery controller, which allows you to configure DNS health checks, monitor your application's ability to recover from failures, and control the recovery of your application.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. So your application can live on different things in the cloud. So it can live on instances. You'll have load balancers distributing that kind of traffic between those instances yeah, that's pretty much it. Just your instances or servers, whatever you may call it. But you could also have it in like an S3 bucket. That's what today's lesson is going to be. In like the demo, we're going to be creating an S3 bucket and using the site hosting feature and using the Route 53 to create some records. And we'll actually be able to put it on the browser and search for that domain name for application. So you kind of see like almost like an end-to-end between like having your application, setting it up in an S3 bucket where you would store it, and then being able to display the application in the browser itself. And so DNS, we use DNS in AWS's Route 53 to do such that. Okay, so we can just jump right into the lesson. So there are different types of routing within DNS. There's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven of them. In our lesson today, we're just going to do simple routing. This one's the most basic and it only accepts. So there's different types of records. We're really only going to be covering A type records. Another common ones are like quad A. There's like C name records, but yep, for today's demo, we're really just going to be focusing on the A record, which is just well, that's what you need for simple routing. But anyways, so simple routing uses a single resource that performs a given function for your domain. Example, a web server that serves content for the example.com website. So it's the most simple type of routing. It's okay. Failover is what you use when you want to configure active passover failover. So if something fails, where are you going to route it to, right? If A fails, then go to B. Pretty simple. Geolocation routing is when you use or you want to route traffic based on your location of your users. So say you have people in India, you want to route those to, like an Indian domain, or you want to use different servers for faster latency, stuff like that. So that comes in super handy. This is all super configurable in AWS console. Excuse me. Next, we'll go to the geolocation routing policy. So this is what you use when you want, oh, I'm sorry. We just covered that one. Geo proximity. Use this based on like your resources. So say you have resources in different, it's the same thing as geolocation routing, except instead of going off the user's locations, you're going off of like your resources. And you're able to shift traffic based on that. Super configurable as well. And latency routing, it's pretty much what it sounds like. You use it when you have resources in multiple AWS regions, and you want to route traffic to regions that provide the best latency with less round trip time. So if you're having, let's say, you're on like the East Coast, right? However, your latency is like super bad. It's kind of like geolocation, but it's not based on your location. It's just based on the latency. Like maybe, I don't know, like Seattle's down, and you have to go over to somewhere in California, and you'll route that way, just based on your latency. So there's multi-value answer routing, which what you want to use when Route 53 to respond to DNS queries with right up to 8 healthy records selected at random. So you use this when you have quite a bit of records that are in play. And then there's weighted routing, final one. Use that to route traffic to multiple resources in proportions that you specify. So yeah, I think that's pretty straightforward. Does anyone have any questions on any of these kind of routing?
When it says records, what is that? I think I might have missed it, but what is a record referencing?
Absolutely. So a record is it's like a logical container for you're gonna specify what like kind of servers and like domain names you're gonna have in it. So what you're gonna in AWS, you're gonna have it's called the hosted zone. And your zone is gonna contain like multiple records. And each zone, so like each record will like correspond to like a domain. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So like you'll have like an application living or like a URL in like a record. And that's kind of a decent way to think about it. And then your zone will host or not host, but like hold multiple records in it. Any other questions on routing?
When you say zone, do you mean availability zone?
No, completely different. So availability zones, those pertain to regions, right? You're gonna have like three per region, uh, right? But this zone, just think of it more of a as like a container. It's just gonna be a container of records. Does that make sense?
So since that doesn't talk about availability zones, does the geolocation routing um, or the geoproximity or the latency, do those deal with going across another availability zone?
They can, yes, I believe so. That or your region. Yeah, so you're
Nice.
gonna have like different like data centers in different regions, right? And so that would pertain to your geolocation. Any other questions on routing? This is record routing, by the way. Um, cool. Okay. So now we're going down to public hosted zones. So, oh, okay. Yeah, here it is. So a hosted zone is a container for DNS records for a specific domain. So when you create a hosted zone for a domain, AWS automatically creates a set of DNS records. So there are there's actually five records that are created. One is like an SOA, which is like a signature authentication. It really just kind of, you don't really have to worry about this so much. It kind of just holds information about your record. You don't really have to do anything with it. It's just kind of in the background and floats around and does what it needs to do. It's just for authentication reasons. And then the other four are going to be what are they? They're name server records. So what you're going to do with these records is actually take them to a register, and you're going to register those. So what they are is they're servers. Um, that your application is going to bounce on. Like AWS automatically creates these servers. And they're going to give you like the IP or not the IPs, but the like the domain names uh and you'll take that to a register. There's a bunch of them. I'm sure you've heard of some of them, like GoDaddy.com, Oracle is one of them. There's a bunch, right? So you take them and you register these name servers with them, and they'll have their you'll input like the domain that you want for it, and then that's how you would access like that's how you would go in like the browser and type in the domain name or URL, and then it would route to those servers. So that is one part that I kind of touched on earlier, is that we're not going to be able to do that part, but we'll kind of walk you through it. I don't personally have an account, but I'll show you later. Uh, Let's see. Um, Looks like Chandra had a domain, first created a hosted zone, which will hold all the DNS records. Remember, because the hosted zone is a container of records. And then you will have routing rules or routing records for the written DNS records, which route traffic to the domain or subdomains. So a subdomain is kind of like it's like the prefix of the domain. So if you have like example dot, I don't know, codebatoon.org, or you have like Chandra .codebatoon.org. Like the Chandra part would be the subdomain, and the domain would be the root of like the domain itself. Does anyone have any questions on that? Perfect. I'm going to take silence as you guys understood every single word that I have spoken. Okay, so looks like we're just going to go into a demo here. I don't need to read off this. I pretty much just have it memorized in my head. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is that we're actually going to make an S3 bucket. I think you guys did that with, who was it? Like Preston that covered S3 object buckets.
Yeah, it was Preston.
Yeah. So we're pretty much going to piggyback off that lesson. Um, and so since you guys are familiar with this, I will actually just go ahead and just make this super quick. So another thing that you have to keep in mind with actually here, we could actually start with Route 53. So to get there, you just go in the search bar and Route 53. Pretty straightforward, simple, right? And then on the left-hand column, we will go into the hosted zones. Remember, this is our container that is going to hold all our records. This is one that me and Julius and Preston actually all got together to show you the final product. So I'll demo that later. But anyways, so to create a hosted zone, it's pretty easy. You just go hit this zone and you want to put your domain name in it. There's like example.com, whatever. But I'm just going to call it, um, and it has to match your S3 bucket name too. It's very specific. So I mean, in this demo, we're just going to do S3 bucket, but keep in mind that you can do all sorts of stuff. You can put it on like an instance or like a VPN, or I'm sorry, Amazon calls it a VPS. There's my Oracle lingo coming at you guys. But anyways, so we're just going to make our domain name. So let's just do Reno dot dojo-jump.com, right? Because we're going to be putting this, I think you guys uploaded Dojo Jump into the S3 bucket beforehand, right? That you guys did? Okay, cool. Description, we're going to leave that blank, and we do want to make this public, not private. There's just a couple more steps to go into a private hosted zone, permission wise. So we're going to go ahead and create it, and it goes ahead and create it. So if we actually jump, so we're in it. So let's actually go back. And so it'll display the hosted zone, and we can click on the one that we just created. You can see that there here are the four name servers that are automatically created that will actually need to be uploaded to the register, like GoDaddy.com or like Oracle has their own DNS register. And so you just take those and it will take that and the record name, which is your domain name, and then it'll just kind of link them together. And then here is your SOA, which stands for, I believe it's signature of authentication. It doesn't, yeah, so it's pretty much just, it just holds data for your hosted zone. So there's nothing really to do with that. Let's see, what else is there? There's all sorts of different types of records, but really all you need to know is the namespace servers, which is a type of record. You don't really need to know SOA, but I just figured I'd cover it. And then you're gonna your A type, which is gonna be, we're gonna use simple routing for this later on. So we'll show that later. Anyway, so we've created a hosted zone. So let's go ahead and create a record. Here's the subdomain that I talked about. I think I called it Reno, which is, oh, actually, it was, we put it right here. So actually, I did this wrong. Sorry. We'll just go ahead and delete this zone real quick and start over because I messed up. So actually, I just wanted to do dojo-jump.com and public, and we'll do that. Okay. So we're in the hosted zone, the new one, and we're going to create a record. So my subdomain, every time you do this, you're going to want to do it a little bit differently. So you don't want to just go from the root domain, right? You always want to do something else. So let's add on to it. Let's just say Reno, right? Because this is mine. And then here's the record types. You can see like there's quad A, C name, and they all give like a description of what kind of record they are and what they do. You can always read more about it if you're interested. But for this, we're only focused on A records. And then alias. So if you don't select alias, you can just put in your IP address of like your instance or like your subnet. I don't think you guys have gone over subnets. I think that'll also be part of Preston's lecture that he's giving tomorrow. You know what? Let me stop right there. Does anyone have any questions? You guys got to speak up if I'm going like too fast or too slow. You know.
So, sorry, are we gonna need to create those hosted zones today as part of the lesson?
Yes.
Okay, I'm getting an error on mine. I sent it in the Slack chat, but I just wanted to throw it out there just in case. So
Which Slack chat did you send it in? Oh, you sent it directly to me.
in the code platoon, yeah.
Let's see. One sec. I gotta move this out of the way. I'm trying to create a zone S3. Need to, let's see if I can actually read that. Current user Michael is not authorized. Oh, you were not authorized. Okay, so only the root user in AWS. I don't have admin privileges, but do you want to, I think Chandra can help you out with that. He's the root user and can give you access to doing that.
Okay. Not sure if anybody else is having that issue, but yeah.
Guessing everyone will have that issue, but
Yeah,
that's
because
just
I think it's a group policy and it's applied to all the students. So if Michael doesn't have it, we probably all don't have it on the group policy.
Oh, no kidding. Wow. I mean, does someone else want to check, or a couple other people would just want to log
I'll go
in?
play with it real quick. Yeah.
I've tried. I have the same thing. I can't do
No
it.
kidding. Wow, that's such a bummer. Okay. Good thing this is going to be a short lesson. Yeah, I will message Chandra and see if he can add everyone to that group to allow access. But in the meantime, let's see, let's go back to the screen. Okay, so there's not too much to know about it. We're kind of almost like halfway through it, so let's just carry on. So anyways, so back to this, you could either put like your IP address in there for like your instance or like your subnet IP, wherever your application lives. Today's demo, we're going to use a S3 bucket. So you scroll down here, you can choose like all this other stuff, and like load balancers and like your VPC, which stands for your private, or I'm sorry, your virtual private cloud endpoint. Preston will be going over that tomorrow, but yeah, so you have all these different options. Today, we're going to be using the S3 bucket. You're going to be selecting your region. Actually, I don't have a bucket. So we should go create a bucket. So my bucket name needs to match my record's name. Like those things have to be identical. Otherwise, you'll get an error and it's just not going to work. So let's just do reno.dojo-jump.com. And for this example, I'm just gonna copy example this, and so I don't have to upload any of the files. It's just gonna be the same thing that you guys went over last time with uploading the Dojo application. So anyways, you guys haven't gone over ACLs yet. They're just like control lists or security lists that that just define like routes and stuff like that. So they enable and deny access for like requests. So anyways, we're just gonna have that disabled because we're not really messing with it. We don't want to block any traffic right now. You guys have gone over most of this, so I'll just kind of skip over a lot of this. We don't want a bucket key, object lock. We don't want any of that, right? We just want
Yeah, I do have a question.
yes.
So in this case, since the S3 bucket has to be globally unique name, we should make this one first to make sure
Sure.
that we have a unique name here, and then that way it can match the Route 53.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a good way to go about it. Yeah, I was just naming it kind of uniquely anyways. Like, I don't think anyone else here is named Reno. So, but
I
yeah,
don't know.
if you want to go ahead and create your bucket or use the bucket that you've already created from the last lesson, I think there was a few up there still. By all means, absolutely go for it.
But the unique name, it only applies to S3 bucket, right? Route 53 doesn't have that.
Uh, you might run into an issue if you have the same name for the hosted zone. But the hosted zone in the record, you should be good. So like each record is specific to its hosted zone. And so you all are going to have different hosted zones. I guess not tonight since you don't have permissions. Um, but yeah, just to make sure your S3 bucket isn't copying anyone else's S3 bucket name. That's probably a good
Right.
idea.
Thanks.
Yeah, you know what? Let me actually message Chandra right now. Maybe he'll be able to provide you guys access before I finish this lesson. All right, perfect. Cool. So back to the lesson. Okay, so alias. We're choosing to grab our application from an S3 bucket. Oh, actually, I don't think we finished creating the bucket yet. Okay, so we got everything. I think we're good to create our bucket. Okay, and then I'm actually just going to go grab these policies from this real quick. Go to the permissions, the bucket policy, and I'm just going to copy it. Okay. It's the same permissions that you guys used during your class with S3. So Reno, Dojo. Okay, so click on my bucket, go over to the permissions, and I just want to paste all this stuff in here. I did paste it, so I do have to remove the old bucket. So I could just go up here and copy my old ARN, just Amazon ID number. I think it actually stands for Amazon resource name, is it? I don't know. Anyway, unique identifier. So we should be good here. Perfect. And so we're just going to go to the properties, and we want to enable the static website hosting. I believe Preston covered that. Did he? Okay, I see some head nods. I think we're good. So I'll just be super quick about this then. Index.html, right? And that's what it's going to point to. And you can use a redirect request for an object. You use that for different objects, or if you want to go, yeah, to pretty much different buckets and different domains. But for this, we're just going to do host a static website and save that. So I think our Amazon S3 bucket is good now. I don't know what happened there, but let's go back. Anyways, also, here's another thing to point out. If you go to the properties and you go to your static website hosting, here is your URL, right? Like you can click that, and like that'll display like your Dojo jump. 404. Why am I getting a 404? Let's go back to that and just double check everything real quick. Let's see, are the objects in there? Okay, looks like I thought when you copy an S3 bucket, it should copy the contents of it anyways. But let's just go ahead, and you should only need the index.html, the JavaScript, and the styling. Okay, and then that should be fine. We'll upload that. Should just take a second. Yep, cool. Good. So we'll go back to the properties and just double check that our jump post is correctly on our S3 bucket. And it is. Cool. So super happy to see that. So now we can actually go over to, yeah, so we're in Route 53. Again, you can just type it in the search bar, Route 53. So we created a hosted zone, right? We created dojojump.com. So let's go into that and create a record. So our subdomain, we want it to be, it wants to be specific, so you don't use the root, right? You're going to use a records. We kind of covered why. Alias. Remember, we're not using an IP address, and because we want to pull from the S3 bucket this time. So let's click on that, and we'll go to the S3 bucket, and I forgot what region I put that in. Let's go and see. This is Ohio. Okay. So this is, you want the regions to match, otherwise it's not going to show up. Anyways, so your S3 endpoint, if everything is done correctly, your S3 name matches your hosted name, or I'm sorry, your record, your like subdomain and your root domain, then it should populate right here. And it does, so we know we've done something correct. Okay, here is the routing policies that we kind of talked about earlier during the lesson. You have your simple routing, your weighted, geolocation, latency, and the rest of them. So for this one, we're just going to do simple routing. It's the easiest one, and as you can see, it only allows the A records. If you go to like weighted, you have more input to do it and stuff like that. But yeah, you can mess with these all later if you feel ambitious. And it's really good stuff to know. So I do highly recommend kind of playing around with the console. The more you get familiar with it, the better. Absolutely. Like the more you'd be able to talk about it in like a job interview, and people Like interviewers, like the deeper you can talk on a topic, the more likely you are to get hired. Um, it's just simple facts. Do we have any questions thus far? Awesome. Well, I'll take silence as you guys are understanding every word that I'm saying, and I love that. Right. Okay. So evaluate target health. We're just going to click that no. It's not really needed here. So let's just go ahead and create a record. So we created our A record. Here it is. And so, excuse me. So typically what we would do at this point, it actually says it in the lesson somewhere that you need. Yeah, right here. So log into your register account, right? Code Platoon does not have register accounts for you guys right now. So I'm kind of sad to see that and hear that, but I think Julius is actually working on it to get you guys some accounts or at least one account. And so you can actually go through the steps. But anyway, it's pretty easy. You're just going to log into like the register account, whether it be like GoDaddy or there's so many different ones, right? And so what you're going to do is you're going to take the name servers and you're just going to add it. Like it'll just like walk you through steps and you just, you add them there and you're going to put in like the your domain name and like your subdomain and it'll kind of all link it together, right? And then that way you'll be able to take your domain name and your subdomain name, copy and paste that into your browser and it'll take you right there. Unfortunately, we can't do that. But what I can do is show you the one Julius was kind enough to use his register account. And so we actually went ahead last night and set that up and we registered all these name servers. So if we go into the browser, we'll be able to put that in there and we're able to do it, right? So we have successfully created a subdomain of example and domain root of nitoscience.com, and we have displayed our application in the browser. So I think that's super cool. As you can see, we can take an application, create it front, like all of you guys have gone through the full stack course. So should be confident or at least know the basics of how to create a full stack web application. And then this, taking your knowledge in the from this lesson and other lessons prior, be able to store your application, deploy it, and actually be able to see it in the browser, which I think is super cool. And any interviewer is absolutely going to love to see that you have like the full knowledge of going from full dev work to deployment. So let's see. So for the lesson tonight, you can kind of let's see. John messaged me back. No, he's actually offline right now, which is super unfortunate.
I
Uh,
tried to change the policy. Maybe somebody just wants to try again.
oh, do you have admin permissions?
It would let me use the syntax analyzer, but it let me change the policy. I just added
Yeah, does someone or a couple people want to go over to Route 53 and see if they're able to create a hosted zone real quick?
the same at Reno. I'll just as a warning though, I'm known to break stuff. So if I break everything, I'm just going to say it was your fault.
Where were
Absolutely.
I blame it on the Marines.
Yeah.
where were y'all getting the error, Roy and Nika? Was it when you went to search for a domain for access denied?
Yeah, it was at that first screen. I still got it. I just told Chad, I was like, I'm still getting it, but I clicked on the create hosted zone page, so I'm just gonna see if it'll
Yeah,
let me.
same. Like you can go in the page and type everything in if you want to, but then when you click create it, It says that you don't have create hosted zone access on Route 53.
Okay, yeah, that's what happened to me too.
Oh, what a bummer.
Yep, same thing.
All right, yeah. Well, I messaged Chandra, so hopefully he will either, I don't know. I've got low hopes that he'll be able to get it tonight. Maybe we'll just have to go through the lesson at a later time. Or yeah, the assignment. But I mean, as you saw, it's a pretty quick one. You just got to make sure one that your S3 bucket and your record name match. They just have to be identical, and then you should be good. That's probably the most difficult thing, besides getting your like S3 bucket set up. That the S3 bucket probably takes the most time out of it. Um, but outside of that, hopefully Julius and whoever else he's working with can secure some register accounts to register those name servers to your domain names, and then you could actually be able to see like, oh, like, hey, I deployed a full stack application, and like I can actually see it in the browser. So that's awesome. So does anyone have questions about anything hosted zones, DNS, Route 53, like routing policies, uh, S3 buckets, anything?
I think the last part might have tripped me up where we were talking about the cert and the registrar service. I have a domain for my project, for example, and I don't remember doing anything to set up. I have a domain and a subdomain, and I just remember creating acerts and pointing them at the EC2 address, but I don't remember doing
Gotcha. Yeah.
anything aside from that.
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
just because it's S3.
that's no. Well, yeah, yes and no. So
Okay.
yeah, so when you use instances, you can kind of bypass this a little bit. But it gets a little more complex when you need to throw like load balancers into the mix. And so you actually need DNS for that to kind of help with those the DNS or the help with those queries. However, if you use an instance, you can just remember here, let me share my screen again. Da, 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 da. Yeah, so if you go Nido Science, and let's just say we want to create a record. But yeah, you can see, yeah, you can also just like put your IP in here directly, and then you wouldn't have to actually register those name servers that are created automatically when you create a hosted zone. So you kind of bypass that. So, I mean, if you guys want to do that and just create an instance and then just upload that application to the instance, you could absolutely do that. And then you'd be able to put it in the domain or into the URL space. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I don't think I've done it with the like using the S3 bucket. It makes sense since it doesn't have anywhere else to serve it or whatever. There's nothing like
Yeah, so you
serving
need
it besides itself.
Yeah, so you're gonna need servers regardless, and that's kind of what the DNS does is it spins up some servers for you, and then you just register those servers, and then connect it to the domain name. And so, I mean, this is like a very basic. This is just like scratching the surface of using a domain name system. So it gets pretty large scale. There's a lot of stuff that's not covered. Like there's like a global DNS. I forgot like the actual name of it, but it goes to like a global DNS kind of server online that's like globally known. And then like if it doesn't find like that IP or at like that domain, it goes to like a different one and then it goes to a different one. And so I think there's actually might be a photo of it in the curriculum. Am I sharing my screen? Yeah, here we go. So when a user makes a request, it goes to like a register. This is a very basic, simple. There's a lot more that goes on behind
I
this.
don't think your screen is sharing.
Oh, sorry.
You're fine.
Yeah. So this is a very basic diagram of kind of what happens, like the full process of it. Very basic. So there's actually a lot more that happens in like this step. But to not get like too confusing or like too into the weeds, this would be like your register. Right? Like your GoDaddy.com, Oracle has theirs. There's a global one. There's a whole bunch of them. And so you go to like GoDaddy.com, and then that's your register. That's where you would register those name servers that are automatically created. There's 4 ones that are automatically created when you create a hosted zone. And so what that does is you put in you type in the browser, I don't know, like google.com. It's gonna be like, okay, like what is google.com? It's gonna go to GoDaddy.com, put in google.com, and it'll be like, okay, like here's like some name servers or like IP spaces. What are we going to do? What are we going to do with those? And so it's going to reroute that to AWS in this case. Route 53 is like the service provided by AWS, and it's going to be like, oh, hey, like that's our server. We know exactly where to point that to. And then here, and then you point it to like an S3 bucket, and then your S3 bucket, like you put like your index.html for like your landing page or whatever. And so it'll just reroute to that. So that's kind of like the end-to-end, like a very simple overview of like end-to-end of how DNS works with an S3 bucket, that is. But like you kind of pointed out earlier, if you have an instance, you can put your application on that instance, and then just be able to use that IP and like subdomain. And then that would show up in the browser as well, since you have your own, I mean, it's your instance, right? You're not having to route it through anything.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you know if we're gonna get to later, like the certificate and ACM stuff or whatever? I figured out how to get my app on HTTPS, but it was like a pain. And then I like know that there's other ways from the research that I did. So I'm trying to figure out what's the least painful way of doing it.
I'll be honest,
But
I haven't ran through the entire curriculum, so I'm not sure. I've ran through like, I don't know, maybe like 25% of the curriculum so far. So I'm not entirely sure. Maybe Chad can best answer that if that's going to come on later in the course or not.
Can you
I
ask
don't know.
say it again, Phil? I missed the question because I was responding to some chat. But what was the question?
I wasn't sure if we cover with the domain stuff, like using ACM to like set up certs for like doing a HTTPS application essentially. I know we the other day figured out some stuff and that got the HTTPS like Docker configuration figured out, but I think there's a simpler way to do it in ACM. I just haven't tried it, and I was curious if we like touch it all in the
I,
curriculum.
I don't think we cover it, but that's one of those things that you can just ask one of the instructors that knows how to do it and just talk them and just guilt them into doing it one day because I'm sure somebody would do it. I'd like to
If I
see
can,
it.
I'll just do it the other way and then tell you
Yeah,
which one's
but
easier. But
I don't remember us touching upon that.
okay.
Yeah. So Tristan asked a question. Is there a benefit to using something like GoDaddy? So yeah, absolutely. So when you created a hosted zone, it creates the 4 name servers, and so those are 4 servers, right? 4 instances, hosts. And so when you use GoDaddy, it routes, it pretty much makes that connection between like, here's your domain name, and then here's the servers that you're going to be using. And then when you have you guys gone over load balancers? Probably not, because that's a networking component, which we're just kind of getting into. But you'll put like a load balancer behind it, and it will shoot the traffic in a way that you determine to each of the servers. So yeah, I mean, you're just gonna have to register it either way. Otherwise, you'll just be spinning up a bunch of different servers and kind of managing them yourself. Where Route 53 can do that all for you. Did that answer your question, Tristan?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Awesome, cool. Does anyone have any other questions about the lesson or the assignment? Yeah, again, you can't really do the assignment because we're kind of blocked on permissions, but
Yeah, I got a different error now. I think since Chad was doing it, I like went to make a hosted zone, but after I do that and it's showing me the site that I made, the name, it now gives me a different error. It says Route 53 colon list resource record sets is what I don't have authority for now, so it's different. Not that that's much, I guess, much better, but it is a different error.
Yeah, it still sounds like a permission error. Um, yeah, so
Would you mind just copying and pasting it just how it's in that error? It's just long. I don't want to type it out and get a typo. So it's
Done.
doing camel case, right? Copy that error portion, what it's missing, and I'll add that. I think it's just missing one more permission. So you can create a hosted zone now. I think everybody can create one, but you can't list it, or you can't retrieve anything from it. I'll try and get this fixed. I think we're close.
The joys of troubleshooting. You never escape it, no matter where you go in IT.
absolutely. I'm just going to stop the recording.